All right, I want to welcome everyone to the History of the Commission Project, and very fortunate here today to be sitting down with Paula Franzese.
Such a pleasure.
And I want to start off going over some of the things on your resume, which is so extensive and impressive that I'm going to have to cut a few things out.
Please do.
Some of the highlights. You're Peter Rodino Professor of Law here at Seaton Law.
Yes.
And I want to add that we're lucky enough to be here at Seaton Hall Law School to do this interview. And you're Director of Leadership Fellows Program here at Seaton Hall.
Wonderful program.
Great program. And you want to talk about that a little bit?
Oh, Jeff, it is such a good program. It was started, I'm directing now to you in the audience. Thank you for watching this program. The Leadership Fellows is a program that we started about 7 years ago, and it's experiential learning. It allows our law students to hone their leadership acuities, because lawyers are leaders. Intrinsically we are, and explicitly we are. So it speaks to the elements of effective decision making. It inculcates the ethical referent in determining the right thing to do when the path is not particularly clear. And it also takes our students out into the field to lead as servant leaders on behalf of a number of initiatives, as far-ranging as immigration reform effort, to providing legal assistance and pathways for victims of intimate partner violence, to teaching media literacy in some of our local high schools in the great city of Newark. We are so proud of those leadership fellows, and I'm bursting right now because on February 15th, 2 teams of our leadership fellows, one group still in their 3rd year of law school, the other now young alumni, will be feted. They'll be honored by the New Jersey State Bar Association for their excellence in leadership on behalf of the initiatives that they started that are still going strong during their tenures as leadership fellows. So it's a program very close to my heart. Thank you for letting me talk about it.
So they're learning and also contributing to the community.
Absolutely,
at the same time.
and that, you know, and that's a life well lived, right? It's all about service, and it's all about paying it forward and also paying it back, because we all stand on the shoulders of the people who came before us.
Yeah, great, that's tremendous. And I also want to mention that I guess in 2020 you were named as one of the top women in law in New Jersey by the New Jersey Law Journal.
My mom framed that, so that that story is now sitting proudly in kind of a life-size montage in my, of all places, in my mom's kitchen. But for an Italian family,
where else? Right? In the kitchen, right?
Where else? Yeah. Thank you for mentioning that.
Is it on the refrigerator, or is it?
No,
okay.
It's just right opposite the kitchen table, so it's kind of fun and funny.
Yeah, good. Very, very excellent. Okay. And also, you hold a Bachelor of Arts and summa cum laude and Phi Beta Kappa with honors from Barnard College.
Very special
with
place.
Columbia University.
Yes.
And your law degree is from Columbia
Law School, close to my heart.
Right. So as I said, your resume is really impressive and extensive.
Thank you, Jeff.
I don't. It would take me probably an hour to cover everything.
No need.
But of course, last but not least, you were a commissioner on ELEC.
Yes.
From 1996 to 2003.
Tremendous learning opportunity and a very, very special time to be called for public service. It was Governor Christie Whitman whose office had called, and then she had made the call asking me if I would agree to serve. And the funny story, I'll breach, I guess it's called, is it the third wall that I'm betraying now, that I'm speaking now directly to the viewer? But I will. My son, Michael Luigi, was born in 1993. Nina was born in 1996. in 1996, it was first her office, her general counsel, and then the governor who called my home to ask if I would serve. And Michael Luigi, who was a very precocious toddler, picked up the phone. This was unbeknownst to me. And apparently he was quite articulate, and he said to the caller,
Future lawyer.
he is. He's a
Okay,
lawyer.
right.
Jeff, he's a lawyer. He said, "Excuse me, but who is this, please?" And Governor Whitman is just such an extraordinary person without any airs. She said, "Hello, my name is Governor Christy Todd Whitman. Who is this?" And he said, "This is Michael Luigi." And apparently, shortly thereafter, before the message could be communicated, unbeknownst to the governor perhaps, she was talking to a 3-year-old, Michael hung up the phone. So that was the end of the conversation, and I never got the message. I never got the message. And then finally, it was a very wonderful person in the governor's office who followed up to double check, because it wouldn't be like me to decline to return the phone call. And sure enough, that's how we connected. And then the ELEC story coinciding with the greatest joys of my life, the arrival of my children. Nina, born in '96, as a young toddler before her school years, I would often bring her with me to ELEC meetings. I think you remember, Jeff. And there's one photo of all of us as the commissioners assembled. And if you look closely, right in the corner, you see this very, very small person with very, very big curly hair. And that's Nina, who was about 2 years old at the time. And I love that photo. I keep it framed on my desk. We mark time through our children. And I think about how close to front mind my time with ELEC is. It was one of the greatest things I've done in the public interest, and it also coincides with perhaps the greatest thing I've been a part of, and that is raising my children.
It makes it even more special,
Right.
the whole thing. And yeah, you also were vice chair.
I was, and then I assumed the role of vice chair, and the great Judge Ralph Martin was the chair.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, they were good years. And let me kind of pick up on that. We were talking about in 1996. We began, and you were on the commission at that time.
Right.
We began the process of upgrading our computer operations,
remember.
which has really flourished as time has gone by. And we have Ken here, who is one of our key people working with her over there with our computers.
Pardon me, Jeff. You have done such a great job because the website is accessible to the public, and that's the whole idea. What moved me most about ELEC and the work that we do and that you continue to do is its commitment to transparency, to deputizing the private citizen to be a private attorney general. Any one of us can look at a database to endeavor to follow the money and see where the campaign contributions are from, where the money is going, and the commitment depends on access to the information. So what a great job you've done. It's a model for the nation.
Thank you. I mean, you've answered one of the questions I had.
Yes.
So I will I'll just go on in terms of, you're in academics as well, and how helpful is, our website to, academics who want to do research and
It's immensely helpful. It is one of the most user-friendly of sites in the country. And our students, we offer courses in election law. We've got the very distinguished Jean Meza, one of our professors here, who teaches election law and campaign finance. And our students speak of the accessibility and the ease within which they are able to navigate the site that you have succeeded in creating, modernizing, and improving again and again and again. It's the best in the game. Our students also have grown up in a time of cynicism, in a time where politics have become so terribly polarized and tribal,
Yeah.
where persons are divided and where facts seem to somehow matter less than they ever did. And our students take great solace in knowing that there are bodies supported by government, committed to the twin aims of accountability, transparency, and allowing the citizens to be the safest repositories of good government.
Right,
What
right.
ELEC does restores public faith and confidence. And you remember, Jeff, I'm sure, and encounter it still, private citizens and citizen watchdog groups who keep them honest, who keep those who seek and hold office honest, because they have access to the information, and knowledge is power. So the database and the commitment to continued transparency is apparent. It's apparent when people call the commission or email the commission. You've got the most impeccable staff, and people respond. No one gets stuck, mired in the red tape. People receive answers, and you get a person who is learned and astute on the phone to respond, or better, respond to an email. It is such a heroic staff, and I know that you do it all on a limited budget, and everybody there, it starts at the top with you, Jeff, and in my history, Fred Herman, who
Right.
such a class act before you. The commitment and the hours and the sweat equity and heartfulness
Right.
with which you lead, and you're an educator and a professor and scholar yourself. The white papers that you produce, they matter, and they are very, very important contributions to the public domain.
Well, I really appreciate you saying that, and we're very proud of our computer system and our disclosure and transparency. And really, that's a testament to our staff, as you were saying.
Yeah.
You know, not only Ken, but you know, Anthony and the whole group of people that
Yeah.
handle our computer. And I have to say, I depend on them totally.
Right.
Because
I'm
anytime
with
I have a
you.
problem, I
Yeah.
just
I'm
call them
with you,
over, and
Jeff.
they straighten me out. You know, I think it's a generational thing, but
Oh my gosh.
they're
Okay,
they're just
boomer.
excellent. Yeah, right, they're excellent.
Right. I get that all the
right,
time
right.
from my kids.
Let me just move on to you were also on the commission during gubernatorial years, gubernatorial
Yes.
elections, and what is your opinion of our gubernatorial public financing program?
I think
It's
it's
important.
a fair and just program. I have strong feelings about election campaign cycles overall. I believe across the country they need to, certainly for the highest office, the office of chief executive, governor, president of the United States on the federal level, they need to be shorter and they need to be publicly funded. And New Jersey has gone a significant way in achieving certainly the latter aim, and also enhancing the case for transparency. I remember during my tenure on ELEC, we took very seriously the imperative to determine where debates would be aired, who would get to be the sponsor for the debate, and it was always with the intention of assuring the widest possible audience. And I'm
Right.
so heartened because in an election year, when I watch and follow those debates still today, they're done so well and they're so accessible, and I think that's ELEC doing its job.
Well, yeah, you know, it's that, but also the sponsors do an excellent job.
They do a
with them.
great job.
You know, and they're professionals and so forth. And
We have a great
we pretty much
great
select
press.
them, and we try to select the best that we're going to get the widest audience,
Yes.
as you said. But there's so much more with the social media, and so we try to include them in
Yes.
as well as the networks and so forth.
Yeah,
So,
we've got great local
Yeah.
networks and press.
exactly. Now, Also, you know, when you were on the commission, there was a issue that arose with regard to a complaint that the Republican State Committee, I don't know if you recall this or not, the Republican State Committee did an ad, and there was a complaint that this ad should have been counted against Governor Whitman's expenditure limit, and should have been paid for by the Whitman campaign. And the commission made a very important decision in that case. Do you recall any of that, or?
I remember that there was a lot of nuance rendered throughout that
We
process.
actually saw the advertisements, right?
And study, lots
Right.
of study
Yeah.
of the actual content of the alleged infraction. And I remember as well that it was a very judicious deliberation.
Right.
I remember that we spent hours and hours endeavoring to come to an outcome that was almost Solomonic in endeavoring to balance the competing equities. I remember all of that and the care that went into it. It was a fraught process.
It was. And the commission ultimately said that it was a generic ad and that it should not be counted against the governor's expenditure limit. And there was a very gutsy opinion that the commission made after a lot of deliberation.
And it
as you
was,
said.
yeah, it was also prophetic to a point because it was ahead of the time of the PAC and the Political Action Committee's advent, really, and its ubiquity. And it did draw some distinctions that inescapably had to be content-based. And that's always tricky, particularly within the realm of vindicating First Amendment values. And I remember that was a part of the struggle. But in rendering the determination, we did establish some clear lines and guidance for when the message was generic as opposed to candidate specific. And I believe that became precedent for later determinations and also later crafting of advertisements for candidates.
No, absolutely. And I think that was one of the most difficult decisions
It was.
that any commission,
Right.
of our
It was so
commissions ever had to make.
complicated. It was deeply steeped in First Amendment values and precedent.
And it was very important because we're in the middle of a gubernatorial campaign.
Yes.
And you know how important spending money is for any gubernatorial candidate.
Yes.
And it was a very important decision that
Yes.
was made, and it was precedential, as you indicated.
And what moved me too, Jeff, about that experience, all of the decision making that we did, all of our adjudications and deliberations and all of our hearings were fiercely nonpartisan. And that was very refreshing, that you could never tell which side of the aisle a given member of the commission was from. It was to the point where those dissolved. The commission is quite deliberately balanced between the two parties, and yet party didn't matter. It was state, it was integrity, it was assuring the best outcome for the people of this great state, and there was never politicking, it was never partisan, and not one single vote that certainly I was a part of ever fell along party lines. And if only all spheres of our federal government could follow that lead.
Right. No, you raise a very important point because, our statute says that no more than two commissioners can be from the same party. And the way it's usually worked is usually two Democrats and two Republicans. But they've always, as you indicated, worked really well together and never broken down. I can only remember one time in the whole time that I've been with the commission that there was any difference of opinion between the Democrats on the commission and the Republicans on it. And that was when had to do with Governor Corzine. It had to do with the debate and changing the. It was not a really significant issue, but was just changing the debate, the date of the debate. and the two Democrats went one way and the two Republicans went one
Yeah,
way.
unusual.
And it was very unusual. That was the only time in all those years.
Yeah,
But
that's
every
a
other time,
testament.
the commission functions in a very nonpartisan
Absolutely.
manner, as you indicated, which is really speaks well for the state of New Jersey and for the commission.
Oh,
Yeah.
we are such an integrity-led state, and that seems to be the best kept secret, that people often perceive New Jersey as the corruption capital of the world. It's not.
No, it's
And
not.
when Governor, former Justice O'Hearn and I were charged by Acting Governor Cody to conduct work as Special Ethics Counsel, our primary finding after such an extensive ethics audit of the executive branch of state government is that without exception, the persons who strive mightily, particularly in the trenches of public service, are exemplars. And no one would believe us from the press
Right.
and the peanut gallery until shortly thereafter the Center for Public Integrity ranked New Jersey #1 for the best ethics laws, the best election laws, the best transparency laws. And there it is. We are a very integrity-led state. And the people who serve do not get the credit deserved for vindicating the public trust.
And and everybody's so surprised by that because everybody thinks we're such a corrupt state, and we're really not.
No.
There have been studies that have indicated that other states and so forth are much more corrupt than New Jersey, and yet
Yeah, we're leaders, and it's
Right.
interesting because in my work thereafter as an ethicist, I would be called upon to assist other administrations in other states to craft their own ethics codes. New Jersey was the exemplar. And again, that was met in our own home state with a raised eyebrow. That really? But really, yeah.
Yeah, and just to continue on with the nonpartisanship and so forth, and kind of connect this segue into the gubernatorial program again. When you were on the commission provided public funds to, I think, the first independent candidate.
I remember that.
Mary
Right.
Sabrum. And that really did very much for the public trust, I think. Would you want to talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And Mr. Sabrum, Murray Sabrum, was a trailblazer.
Yeah.
And I recall vividly the commitment to opening the floor and the platform to allow for third-party candidates, to allow for more people who had great independence or who were operating on a platform that was a departure from the political orthodoxy of the two-party system, and to be able to afford Mr. Sabrum this platform and to essentially offer an imprimatur to legitimize that the campaign and the third-party candidate, that yes, we are committed to access, we are committed to opening the gates for all interested in serving. And that was a very powerful statement. And I'm always grateful to that third-party candidate for allowing for that precedent to be established. We need more of that.
Yeah. And as I recall, the commission struggled with that issue as well. There were 2 or 3 meetings that the commission undertook in dealing with that.
Very much so. Again, because it was a departure from the way things were done here and across the country. But I remember that in awarding that grant, in making that decision, the interests of access and the interests of egalitarianism in determining who gets to run, who doesn't, the interests anchored in rooting out some of the worst aspects of big political machine politics. All of those were front mind, and I know that we did the right thing, and it was a very well-intended and also very judicious decision that we made in balancing the competing equities and considering fairness to the candidates from the two mainstream parties.
No, absolutely. I mean, that was that did set another precedent.
It did.
During your tenure, because we had never before had to
wrestle with
that issue or determine that an independent candidate, or his libertarian, I should say, candidate would get public funds.
Right, that's
but
right.
He did qualify.
He did.
And raising enough money. So
that's right. And you got to call it as you see it. Fair is fair.
Right. Exactly. I just wanted to tell everybody again that this is the History of the Commission project, and I'm sitting down today, fortunately, with former Commissioner and Vice Chair Paula Franzese.
I'm happy to be here.
I like to tell the audience we have once in a while remind them who we're talking about, talking to. Also, during your tenure, a couple of professors from University of Albany, they wrote a book, and it was called The Day After Reform. Professor Malbin and Gase from University of Albany. And one of the things that they said along the lines of what you've been talking about, in terms of New Jersey's efforts, the Commission's efforts, including our administration of ELEC and the law, the campaign finance law in general, they said that it was the third best in the nation at that time.
Nice.
I actually think we're the first best in the nation. I do too. But I don't know if you recall that book, and
it was a great. It was a lovely and kind and generous treatment. It's a terrific book. They did get that wrong. I do think that we are ranked and should be ranked first, but it was such a lovely review of sorts, and to see that independent scholars would come to what we know to be truth was very heartening.
Right. Now getting to some of the issues that we have in our electoral process. One, of course, is the issue of independent expenditures. These groups are spending millions of dollars on campaigns in New Jersey, have had a significant impact over elections over the last decade or more or so, and have been totally outdistancing political parties in terms of their influence over campaigns. Have any thoughts on independent expenditures and their relationship to the process and to political parties and the importance of political parties?
It is problematic because certainly the perception, and we see this mirrored often, almost exclusively in the reality, is that one has to be deeply pocketed and very well financed to aspire to higher office. And that defeats certainly the more egalitarian ethos that is supposed to attend the call to public service and public leadership and holding public office. The need to be so well endowed, so well financed, creates all sorts of problems of its own. We know on the federal level that certainly congressmen and women are in a constant state of electioneering. In the House, every 2 years, meaning we're always gearing up for the next cycle. That leads to very pernicious elements, pay to play, that so much legislation endeavors to weed out, and yet it persists in all sorts of backdoor ways, shadow money. Jane Mayer's very, very important book, Dark Money, on the federal side makes plain how the toxic mix of money and election seeking can yield untoward results and can also shake the public trust, erode the public trust. So many good people who have heard the call to public service and public office decline the opportunity to pursue those. And when asked, more often than not, their response is twofold. First, I will refuse to be beholden to donors. I'm my own person, and I cannot do the pandering that that particular person perceived would be needed, nor could I indulge the perception that I would somehow be in someone else's pocket. That's the first reason, which makes me feel sad and lament what is wrong with and dysfunctional about our system of campaign finance, certainly on a national field. And then the second thing they'll say is, I cannot do that to my family, which is also such a sad commentary about what the negative can do and how the devolution of political discourse and social discourse has led to the dissolution of the private realms and what is considered sacred and off limits. It seems that that off-limit line is dissolved as well. We've got to do better in terms of our financing laws and also in terms of tamping down the acrimony and often meanness that can infect political campaigns. We've got to do better. Justice O'Hearn and I had been working on a truth in campaign advertising statute, but the obstacle of a statute such as that for First Amendment values is it is inescapably content-based, and it is also, if not content-based, doomed for vagueness. So with those as the twin obstacles, it has been very difficult to compel the kind of integrity-led discourse that we'd hope, particularly on the part of those who aspire to elected office.
Some years ago, there had been a proposal to create a commission or a task force that would oversee campaign advertising.
Right, I remember.
And determine whether they were too negative or not.
Right.
And of course, the old
It
First
failed.
Amendment gets in the way.
It failed,
if you will. Which you know we do have to take into consideration.
Oh, very much so, front and center.
Right.
And political speech.
Right.
I teach civics to middle school students in my hometown, and we always begin with the first of the amendments in our Bill of Rights. Political speech is the most essential to a democracy, so it must be shielded from the heavy hand of government regulation.
Yeah, no, that's very true, and a lot of people don't really understand that these days, in a sense, you know. But you had also mentioned pay-to-play a moment ago, and one of our recommendations at ELEC is to have one pay-to-play law statewide that applies to everyone. You know, at the municipal level, the county level, the state level, and right now we have a situation where we have a pay-to-play law that has, you can have a local ordinance, you have the fair and open, what's called the fair and open loophole, that all a municipality or county has to do is advertise publicly, and you know the pay-to-play law doesn't apply.
Right.
And it's really convoluted and really complicated.
It is.
And we've called for one just state law, just apply across the board.
That's right.
And pay-to-play is very important because it does connect the dots between a contribution by a potential public contractor and the contract that they receive. It's really important for the public to know that.
Agreed.
But when something gets so confusing, it's hard to enforce and it's hard to comply with.
Yes.
And so would you support, our ideas about having one across the board
Absolutely.
pay to play law?
Wholeheartedly. We need to make uniform the governing laws. New Jersey has the blessing and curse of a two-tiered system. We've got a central state government, but then we also have what is often the Wild West of local home rule. What do we have, Jeff? 566?
565 or 66
Now
communities.
565.
I never can get that right,
municipalities.
565
well, it
or
changes.
566.
It fluctuates. We have a fierce commitment to home rule, and that's part of the great Jeffersonian tradition and ought to be respected. But we also run the risk of becoming mini fiefdoms, each with their own rules. We've got local ethics laws and local campaign finance laws that can be bewildering and very difficult to reconcile with the state imperative. I think uniformity would go a long way. Similarly, we have a uniform ethics code for the executive branch of state government, but not a concomitant uniform system to apply to the legislative branch and local government. Instead, we have the local government ethics law, and that pursuit of uniformity, I am wholeheartedly in support of. It streamlines, it modernizes, and most essentially, it renders clear the rules of the game. A cohesive system also does a better job of eliminating the loopholes.
I'm sorry, I didn't get the last?
Of eliminating the loopholes.
Oh, yes,
the
right,
ways
right.
around the rules.
No, exactly, and that's another aspect of it, that because of the law, it's a lot of PACs have been created to kind of circumvent the law and so forth.
Right.
And a lot of money is going to independent groups to get it, because the independent groups are not can't be under the pay-to-play law. So
Right.
there's a lot of circumvention
Yes.
that's going on because we don't have a uniform
That's right.
pay-to-play law. So excellent. And you also mentioned the Ethics Commission, and you were chairwoman
I was.
of the
yeah.
State Ethics Commission,
Yeah.
which is a very, very important commission in
Yeah.
the state of New Jersey.
Very much so. And it is our work as Special Ethics Counsel joined a great tradition in our state. Previously, the State Ethics Commission was known as the Executive Commission on Ethical Standards, and it was the brainchild of the esteemed Assemblyperson Bill Schluter,
Oh, yeah.
who
Yeah.
passed only
Yep,
recently, an iconic force for good in our political system. And he was deeply committed, then as senator, to assuring the public trust and vindicating that trust. And Senator Schluter, in addition to being instrumental in the creation of ELEC, he, with Governor Byrne, also instrumental in
And
creating.
Cahill as well. Cahill,
Yeah,
Governor
and
Cahill
be-
before-
Governor Cahill-
Republicans and Democrats.
Right,
But,
it was
yeah.
bipartisan before him in creating this Executive Commission on Ethical Standards. And that commission, now the State Ethics Commission, fortified, and ELEC have always had the blessings of a superb executive director at the helm. I mentioned the great Fred Herman during my tenure, and you, his esteemed deputy Jeff, and then continuity is essential to then have you accept the mantle and continue in that tradition of integrity-led leadership of this critical organization. And in my experience, the State Ethics Commission was preceded by the impeccable leadership of Rita Straminsky and Jean Mayer,
Right.
and then thereafter Kathleen Wichnick. And that tradition of independent leadership must be protected.
And none of us can do it, though, without the staff that we have. And,
Yes, thank you.
That's the one thing that
Right,
we have
that's
at the
right.
commission is a tremendous staff that makes me look good.
Right.
If I do, it's
Right.
because of the staff.
That's right, which
And-
demonstrates exactly why your leadership ethos has been so successful,
Yeah.
because it is all about honoring the people who make it happen.
No, that's right. They do make it happen. I mean, I don't make it happen, but they make it happen. One of the other things that I guess we already did talk about the gubernatorial program and how essential that is to gubernatorial elections. But on a national level, I think we're with that program, and now we have a very good individual who heads that up. Stephanie Olivo was part of it. We're talking about staff, and from time to time we do run into issues like the last gubernatorial program. We had a few issues that the commission had to deal with, and once again, with our current commissioners, they handled those issues very well.
Good.
And so we've been very fortunate to have not only good staff, but good, commissioners that
Yeah,
really took their jobs and their tasks very seriously.
and that
And
is
I know
so
you can speak to
reassuring.
that as well.
Oh, absolutely. No one ever dials it in service to the commission. We, as commissioners, were always well prepared. We always entered those meetings having read the record and all of the materials leading
And
up
there's
to.
quite a bit of work that goes on for the commissioners as well.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And it's done not for the glory, that's for sure. It's done in service to the public trust and to uphold and vindicate all that is good and noble about the great tradition, and it is a New Jersey tradition.
Yeah, it is, and I think we've been very fortunate. I think to have, like we were talking before. I think New Jersey sometimes gets a bad rap in terms of its government and
Yeah.
everything. And
I am so
we've-
proud to be a resident
Yeah,
of this
yeah,
state.
I think we've do a pretty good job, and it's very often not recognized, in terms of the people that serve in government
Yeah.
and people who have served in government. You were talking, one thing comes to mind, you were mentioning before about just in terms of running for office, and people have to really put themselves out there, because in this day and age, with things being so polarized, and sometimes lying about you, and the individuals that get involved, and then what their families have to sometimes put up with, and so forth. And I remember talking to and how much money you need to raise
Yeah.
to be able to just run for office. And I remember talking to Governor Kane about this, and Governor Kane was saying how he was so reluctant. That was one of the things he really didn't like doing, was
Fundraising.
asking people and raising money. But you just had to do it
Part of the game.
in order to be competitive.
Right.
But one of the things the gubernatorial public financing program has kind of eased that a little bit, has kind of made it easier for candidates that are qualified to run but otherwise couldn't,
That's
because they
right.
didn't have money,
It's
that they were able to
essential.
do that.
It's essential. I think that elections ought to be exclusively publicly funded. And I think the same is true, more so on the national level. I do think that certainly presidential election cycles need to be far more abbreviated than they are, and they need to be
One's starting
publicly
right now,
funded.
right, already.
Yeah, we're
Mhm,
starting
right.
with the endless conjecture and the acrimony. It's already starting.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it used to be, I remember, I guess it was when President Kennedy, John F. Kennedy, when he was running for office, I think he started his campaign maybe just a few months before the November election. And now we're talking 2-3 years out.
Yeah.
where people are, forming committees and
Right.
beginning to run for office.
And the electorate becomes weary.
Yeah, no, I think that's, I believe, this is just a theory of mine, that's one of the contributing factors to lower voter turnout.
Yeah.
Over the years, is people just get
Tired.
overly saturated and tired of it. It just goes
Right.
on and on and on. We have a presidential election, and we go right into a state election,
Right.
gubernatorial election.
Very difficult.
And people, I think, really kind of get tired of it. Again, I've been talking with former Commissioner Paula Franzese, and this is the history of the commission project. And we're just about to end the interview, but is there anything you'd like to add that we haven't covered or talked
A
about?
simple debt of gratitude to you, to all of the extraordinary people who make ELEC great, who have over the years labored, often tirelessly, to build the foundation upon which the Great Commission now stands. Thank you. And as a citizen now, a private citizen, I can tell you with admiration that what you do matters. It makes a great difference. Thank you for all that you do to restore trust, which at bottom is what holds our great nation and our democracy together.
Well, thank you. Thank you for sitting down with us. It's been a pleasure to speak with
Likewise.
you and to have this opportunity to talk a little bit about our commission.
It was a joy,
Thank you.
and you're such a great interviewer.
I'm new to the job. But,
You're great at
yeah.
it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, wonderful.
All right.